The fire had died out hours ago, but the smell of smoke still lingered over the small town like a cloud of grief. People gathered outside the hospital, whispering in low voices, shaking their heads at the tragedy no one knew how to mend. A little girl had survived a brutal house fire, a fire that had taken everyone she loved and left her with burns, covering most of her small body. Her name was Amy. Inside a quiet room, she lay wrapped in bandages, barely recognizable, her face hidden behind layers of gauze. Only her eyes, big and frightened, showed she was still fighting to live. Doctors said her physical wounds would take months, maybe years, to recover. But her emotional wounds, no one knew how deep they went. As people whispered about her future, they said the same thing again and again. Who would take her in? So much responsibility. No single parent would ever accept a burned child. But destiny often enters softly without warning. And that destiny was about to walk into the hospital holding the hand of a sleepy little boy. Daniel Reed, a single father, arrived at the hospital that morning because his son Ethan had a fever. He sat in the waiting area, gently rubbing Ethan's back as the boy rested his head on his father's shoulder. It was then, between the beeping machines and shuffling nurses, that Daniel heard it, a soft broken cry, a sound so full of pain that it tightened something inside his chest. Ethan lifted his head. "Dad, someone's really sad." A nurse rushed past them, wiping tears from her eyes. Daniel stood instinctively. "What happened?" he asked. "She woke up," the nurse whispered. "The little girl from the fire, and she's asking for her father." She paused, swallowing hard. "She doesn't know he's gone." Something inside. Daniel shifted, something buried deep under years of quiet suffering, something that recognized the pain of losing someone you needed most. Without thinking, he followed the nurse. And that moment changed the rest of his life. Inside the room, Amy struggled to breathe through her sobs. "Where's Daddy?" she cried, her voice cracking. He said he wouldn't let go. "Where is he?" The doctor stood frozen, unable to speak. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Before he could move, Ethan gently slipped out of his father's arms and approached the bed with innocent courage. He reached out and touched the girl's trembling hand. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're not alone." Amy blinked through her tears, looking at him like he was the first ray of light in her darkness. Word spread quickly through town that the burned child had survived. But sympathy lasted only moments. Soon came the cruel predictions. "No one will take her." A single father? He'd never accept her. "She'll be a lifelong burden." "She's too damaged." People shook their heads with certainty. Daniel heard all of it, and each word felt like a knife. Because once, when Ethan's mother walked out on them, people said the same things about him. That he wouldn't manage. That he wasn't strong enough. That single fathers couldn't give kids a proper life. He had proved them wrong once. But even he wasn't ready for what fate asked of him next. A week passed. Daniel visited Amy often, always bringing small gifts, juice boxes, stickers, soft toys. Ethan became her little shadow, drawing pictures for her and telling her silly stories until she smiled through the pain. But when a social worker finally came and explained her situation, the truth hit hard. Multiple surgeries, constant supervision, therapy for trauma, a lifetime of care. The social worker looked at Daniel only because he was in the room. He quickly raised his hands. "Oh, no. I was only visiting." Of course he wasn't interested. Everyone assumed that. That night, Daniel tucked Ethan into bed. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "why can't Amy stay with us?" Daniel sighed. "Buddy, she needs more help than I know how to give." Ethan sniffed and wiped his eyes. "But you helped me," he whispered. "You learned?" "You can learn for her, too." Daniel froze, because his son wasn't wrong. Love isn't built on knowing everything. Love is built on trying. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing Amy's cries in the hospital room. And he knew what he had to do. The next morning, Daniel walked into Amy's room with steady steps. His heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. He knelt beside her bed. "Amy," he said softly, "my name is Daniel. I'm Ethan's dad. And if you want, you can come stay with us." Silence. The nurse gasped. Ethan grinned. Amy stared at him with disbelief. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "But I'm ugly now." Daniel shook his head. "No, you're brave." "I'm broken." "No, you survived. And nobody wants me." Daniel gently took her bandaged hand. I want you. The entire room went still. Amy closed her eyes and sobbed, not from pain, but from finally being chosen. The town talked, judging him, but Daniel didn't care, because he knew what he was doing. He wasn't rescuing a child, he was rescuing a family, for the second time in his life. The road ahead wasn't easy. Amy woke up from nightmares screaming. Daniel held her until she calmed down. She cried from the pain of changing bandages. Daniel learned to do it gently. She hid behind her hands whenever she saw a mirror. Ethan stood beside her and said, I don't see your scars. I see my sister. They went through surgeries, counseling, tears, fears, but they also shared laughter, warm meals, game nights, soft moments of love. One day, Ethan handed Amy a drawing. It was 3 stick figures holding hands, Dad, Amy, Ethan. She whispered, but I don't look like this. This is how I see you, he replied. Amy smiled, her first real smile in months, and Daniel felt something bloom in his chest. Hope. Months later, at a community event, someone told Daniel, You're a good man. Most people would have rejected a burned child. Daniel shook his head. I didn't save her, he said softly. She saved us. She showed us that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone even when it's hard. He looked at Amy and Ethan laughing together. She taught us, he smiled, that even from ashes, families can be born.